Hello, my name is Lewis and welcome to Gathering the Magic. Today we're looking at a $40 budget Kenessos Priest of Thassa deck. From Jumpstart 22, Kenessos says if you would scry a number of cards, scry that many cards plus one instead. You can pay to look at the top card of your library. If it's a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus or Serpent card, you may put it onto the field. This deck is all about scrying to our heart's content, putting those ocean creatures on top of our library, casting them for lots cheaper, creating a giant board and powering through our opponents for the win. Now, let's jump straight into this budget brew because it's absolutely cracking.
You're obviously fishing for jokes.
As always, we're starting off the deck tech super hot with all of that ramp. First up, we have a pair of Mana Dorks in Findhorn and Llanowar Elves. There's one more to round off the trio in Elvish Mystic, and Whisper in the Wilds to tap for a forest. Tapping for 2 forests if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. We have Cultivate to search your library for 2 basic lands, putting one on the field tapped and one in your hand. And Rampant Growth to search your library for 1 basic land, putting it onto the field tapped. There's Explore to play an additional land for turn, also drawing a card. And Nature's Law to search your library for a forest card, putting that card onto the field untapped. There's Eureka Moment to draw 2 cards, Growth Spiral to draw 1 card, with both of them having the option to play an additional land for turn. We have Fertile Ground to enchant a land. When enchanted land is tapped, you add an additional mana of any colour. And Wild Growth to do exactly the same, except you get a forest instead of 1 mana of any colour. There's Arcane Signet to add either of those Simic colours. And finally, we have Sol Ring, because Sol Ring. Before we get onto that underwater army, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe down below for all things MTG. Subscribing is completely free to do, and it helps our channel grow and grow as we head towards 3,000 subscribers. Another way to help support the channel is to use our referral code, gathering-the-magic, when signing up to Card Market. Shout out to Jay Bank for using our code. You love to see it. Now we're looking at those deep sea dominators that we can cast cheaper thanks to Kenessos. First up is Eryximeth's Slumbering Isle. When you remove those 5 slumber counters, Eryximeth is a huge 12/12 that can tap for both Simic colours. And Inkwell Leviathan, a 7/11 monster with Island Walk, Trample and Shroud. There's Benthic Behemoth, a 7/6 serpent with Island Walk, and Stormtide Leviathan, an 8/8 with Island Walk, also making all lands islands in addition to their other types. And it makes creatures without flying or Island Walk unable to attack, which can be deadly. We have Deep Sea Kraken, an unblockable 6/6 that can also be suspended. Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses and Serpents tend to be expensive to cast cards, so using Kenessos' activated ability really gets the value going in this deck. You could have a powerful but cheap to cast board in no time at all. There's Coma Cosmos Serpent, another uncounterable creature that creates a 3/3 Serpent token at the beginning of each upkeep. Those Serpents can be sacked to tap down a target or make Coma indestructible. And Scourge of Fleets, a 6/6 Kraken that when ETBs, return each creature your opponents control with toughness X or less to an opponent's hand, where X is the number of islands you control. We've added Simic Sky Swallower, a 6/6 with Flying, Trample and Shroud. And another 6/6 in Spawning Kraken. This is whenever one of the big 4 creature types you control deal combat damage to a player, create a 9/9 blue Kraken creature token. That is crazy good. For the final 2 we have Icebreaker Kraken, that when ETBs, artifacts and creatures target opponent controls don't untap during that player's next untap step. You can also return 3 snowlands you control to your hand to return the Kraken to its owner's hand. To keep the value down, we haven't added those snow islands into this budget brew, but if you did want to break the budget, then you can upgrade those basic lands for all of those snowy ones. And Underwater Supporter, Whelming Wave to return all creatures to their owner's hand, except for Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses and Serpents. We've seen the Water Warriors, now let's look at every way to make sure they get to the top of our library. First up we have a load of Scry-Loving counterspells, with Condescend to counter target spell unless its controller pays X, scrying 2, and Dissolve to counter target spell, scrying 1. We have Memory Drain to counter target spell, scrying 2, and No Escape to counter target creature or planeswalker spell, exiling that card and scrying 1. There's Scry-Loving Planeswalkers in Jace Mirror Mage and Nissa Steward of Elements that both have a plus option to scry 2. Even better if you kick Jace and get a second copy of him. We've added Geist of the Archives, this is at the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. And Lifecrafter's Bestiary, that again has that upkeep scry 1 trigger. It can also be a valuable tool to get you some extra card draw too. The more scrying in this deck, the better. We need to be constantly fixing the top of our library to avoid whiffing on that Kenessos activated ability. There's Eyes Everywhere to scry 1 at the beginning of your upkeep, and Sphinx of Foresight for 1 final upkeep scrying trigger. If you reveal the Sphinx from your opening hand, you get to scry 3 at the beginning of your first upkeep. We have Sigilled Starfish that you can tap to scry 1, and Maze Mine Tome that you can also tap to scry 1. It can also be tapped for some card draw and eventually sacrificed to gain you 4 life. We have Psychic Impetus to give enchanted creature +2/+2 and is goaded. Whenever enchanted creature attacks, scry 2. And Retreat to Coral Helm. This is whenever a land ETBs, you may tap or untap target creature or scry 1. Having a variety of ways to scry will help. Adjust the top of your library at any time to get that trigger going whenever that will best suit your strategy. There's Flying Fairy Seer that ETBs scrying 2, and Reason to Believe to pay 1 and scry 3. It also has that Aftermath to potentially play a creature from the top of your library straight onto the field. There's Removal Scry Hybrids in Artisan's Sorrow to destroy target artifact or enchantment and scry 2. And Serum Visions to draw a card, scrying 2. We have Voyage's End to return target creature to its owner's hand, scrying 1. And Crystal Ball that we can pay and tap to scry 2. On to the final 5, we have Blue Classic Brainstorm to draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. And Otherworldly Gaze to look at the top 3 cards of your library, putting any number into your graveyard and the rest back on your library in any order, with that always great flashback option. There's Brainstone to pay, tap and sack to draw 3, then putting 2 cards on top of your library in any order, and Tygum's Scheming to look at the top 5 cards of your library, putting any number in your graveyard and the rest on top of your library in any order. Lastly, there's Soothsaying to pay X and look at the top X cards of your library and put them back in any order. If you are looking for a budget upgrade, then we do have the classic Scroll Rack, which would work perfectly with our good friend Kenessos. Before we finish up with those lands, we're looking at the best of the rest in this budget brew. First up is Biomancer's Familiar to make activated abilities of creatures you control cost 2 less to activate, and Kiora's Follower to untap another target permanent. Perfect for all of our tappy scry cards or just to give us access to that extra land. We have Rewind to counter target spell, untapping up to 4 lands, and Unwind to counter target non-creature spell, untapping up to 3 lands. There's Wash Away to counter target spell that wasn't cast from its owner's hand with that Cleave option, and Shore Up to give target creature you control +1/+1, hexproof until end of turn and untapping it. We have 2 of my favourites in Snakeskin Veil to again put a 1/1 counter on target creature, also giving it hexproof, and Tamio's Safekeeping to give target permanent you control hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, gaining 2 life too. On some card draw, there's Soul's Majesty to draw cards equal to the power of target creature you control, and Green Staple, Return of the Wild Speaker, to draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control. There's Meme Master C's favourite card in Barrier Breach to exile up to 3 target enchantments, and Marit Lage's Slumber that when it or another snow permanent ETBs under your control, scry 1. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more snow permanents, sack it and create a 2020 Marit Lage token with flying and indestructible. Again, a card you can use here just for the scry, or upgrade to those snow lands and cause chaos. Now it's time to round off this deck tech with all of those lands. As always, starting with the basics, we have 17 Island and 14 Forest, as this deck does lean slightly more into that blue base. There's Command Tower to add either of those Simic colours, and Exotic Orchard to add 1 mana of any colour a land an opponent controls can produce. We have Staples, Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse to both tap and sack to search your library for a better field tapped. Lastly, there is Castle Vantress to pay 4 and tap to scry 2. Kenessos is a great new commander from Jumpstart 2022, and one that has the potential to be a really strong, destructive and overall annoying deck for your opponents to have to deal with. There we have it, that is the Kenessos $40 budget brew. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe down below for all things MTG. Check out our link tree in the description below for all of our social media and affiliate links. For now though, I'm all tapped out, so I'll see you in the next video.